right, we're going to go ahead and get started with this morning's pre-race meet availabilities. We are now joined by Brandon Jones, driver number 20, Joe Gibbs Racing Toyota. If you have a question for Brandon, please raise your hand. We'll get a mic to you. We'll start here with Jacob and then go to Cameron.
Jacob Seelman, Race Face Digital. Is the pressure off with a win in the pocket?
Yeah, it is. I think I was getting asked earlier in the week if there's more pressure now to go win more, and I don't think that's the case. I think that momentum's infectious. I think once you open the valve, they start flowing pretty easily. It's funny how that typically works. I've been a receiver of that end as well in the past, right? So, yeah, you just start racing a little bit differently. You put yourself in, I guess, what could look on the outside like riskier situations, but at the end result, those are the moves that result in wins. I think if you come to these races and you think, oh, I've got to win, right? So you start doing all these little things of like, well, let's not race this guy too hard, or let's not push the limit on pit road a little too hard. Like, you're trying to minimize all these mistakes, but all you're doing is just hurting yourself and putting yourself behind the 8 ball. So, yeah, now, what's there to lose? We can go try to get a bunch of points. I think that's our agenda now, is start racking some stages up here and try to get a lot of points and continue to try to get further along in the point standings that we could in the first round here. And it's still really early, which is nice, so there's a lot of time to continue to make ground up and maybe even become a contender for this regular season, right? So I think that this group's gelling super well right now. Sam McCauley's a really, really good crew chief, and we're starting to really click with each other and starting to make the right adjustments during the race and even unloading with better speed than we started the year as well. So it's just all starting to come together, and we're doing it as a group, which is why I think it's working, right? I don't think there's one person overpowering the other. We all sit down together all week long and do this together, and we prepare together. So that's kind of my mentality. I take this as kind of like you would run a military unit, right? You get everybody in a room, you all brief before you go out there, and then you do it as a group. So that's kind of the way that I've been trying to run my race team, and I think we're doing a really good job of it.
You told me late last year that it was never a chemistry or a people issue per se during your time at JRM, that you really did enjoy your time over there over the last 2 years. But what has it been about kind of, I guess, coming home for you to JGR that has just really seemed to flip that switch back and revitalize that momentum that you really had a few years back?
Yeah, I'm glad, because it's just little unknowns, right? Of like, yeah, you go over to an organization you thought, which it does have speed every week, and can't get it done there. So you're like, oh, no, now what's that going to look like if I come back and don't get success or don't have success, So there's a little bit in the back of my mind of the concern of that. But at the same time, I believed in this organization as well. I believed in Joe Gibbs Racing. I think Joe believed in me and kind of welcomed us with open arms, said there was a spot if we wanted to try to make it work. So that just felt right. I think that's all you have to do in life and these decisions. And sometimes they're not always the right move and the right path for you. But if it feels right in the moment, take it, and don't worry about all the repercussions and the risk of the move. Just go with what your heart's telling you to do. And so it felt right to go to Junior Motorsports, and it felt right to come back to Joe Gibbs Racing.
Okay, we'll go to Cameron next, and then Peter.
Cameron Richardson, NASCAR.com. Brandon, I want to go back to Darlington, having not won in so long. Just what was that feeling like on the last lap, having a lead, and just, kind of thinking about, all that you've been through over the last 2-3 years? What was that final lap for you, knowing that you had the lead?
Yeah, what I do after all these races, I like sit down and I'll, if I have a bad week, I'll be like, what was causing the bad week? If I didn't have the result that I expected to go into it, what was the things mentally going on in my head? What were the circumstances, the situations? And every time I win a race, it's I sit down and look at it. I'm like, well, nothing really ever intimidated me the entire race. Like, you had some of the best cup racers in the field, and I'd get around Christopher Bell and Chase and all those guys, and I didn't really care who it was. I just thought they were another competitor and raced them really aggressively and really hard at the same time, right? So I don't know. I felt like everything was just turned on, for Darlington. Everything flowed properly. Everything worked really well. There was never a bad pit stop. We never had really a bad restart. If we did, I was resourceful. I came up with solutions on how to make it better. Yeah, just the whole day seemed elevated. I think we all came into it with a really strong mindset. And we had a lot of momentum prior to Darlington, too. I know the finishes from Martinsville and a couple of those places didn't really show it, but we had started to tap into a lot of speed and really having speed throughout the entire race, not just at the very end. So I had felt that momentum had shifted a little bit, and it was kind of like, all right, well, I don't know when it's going to happen, but I feel like we're getting a lot closer.
Okay, we'll go to Peter and then to Lee.
Peter Stroud, TSJ Sports. Brandon, Justin last week said he was very happy for you post-race and that you guys were great friends off the track. How has that changed, no longer being teammates? And just how did you see Justin as just a fellow competitor?
Yeah, Justin's my buddy. I think that we've raced together for as long as anybody has out here. We've been in the Xfinity Series for a long time together and raced around each other for a long time. And Justin's one of those guys, in my opinion, there's a lot of people you can go to for advice in this garage, and you're not really quite sure if you're going to get the truth and all the answers you're really looking for. And you can go to Justin with a question, and he's just going to give you the right one. He's just going to really lay it out there and tell you exactly what you need to hear. So that's pretty cool from a driver. There's not many people that want to give secrets out or want to give things that they've learned out because that's their advantages. And so they've taken plenty of years to try to figure that out themselves, so it's almost like you have to go now earn it and go figure it out yourself, so Justin does a good job of that. But yeah, we always had fun at Junior Motorsports together. Go to plenty of meetings with him and talk through things, and we even we're doing the Josh Wise program together at one point, working out together, so I've known Justin for a long time. It was cool to kind of hear those remarks from him, and kind of nice to be solidified again, as a contender to win races by some of the better ones in the field.
Lee Spencer, Sirius XM NASCAR Radio and CatchFence.com. I was talking to Ray Hernandez yesterday when you walked by to do the truck race, and he was just pointing out how you seem so dedicated to your craft right now at JGR. And I'm wondering about how much is that second chances, how much of that is your maturity, how much of that is you're now one of the older guys in the field with all these young guys coming in. What's really your push right now?
Well, I think that ironically with the failures the last couple of years, I had to dig deep into myself because when I first came to Joe Gibbs Racing, it was all on the table, and I was more of the person coming into a lot of knowledge and a lot of data and a lot of things that the crew chiefs were just really advanced at doing. And I walked in kind of big-eyed, right? I was like, this is a lot of information to take in. So I had 4 years or whatever that was of all that data and all the stuff we were looking at. And then when we came to Junior Motorsports, the people were very smart there, but they didn't quite have that level of notebooks and things I think that Joe Gibbs Racing had. They did it more of like old school racer way, not engineering data-driven way. And so I almost was like bringing all of that and trying to elevate that game a little bit over there. And through that process, like it kind of made me more of a team leader. And I don't think before I knew how to do that. It was almost like I was coming in as the new guy at Joe Gibbs Racing and letting them teach me. And not saying that I went over there and taught them anything, right? But I felt like the driver of like, oh, well, we were doing this over here a little bit differently, right? Like, let's try to bring that into this program and make this better. So through all that, I was learning a lot about myself and trying to figure out how do I speak up? How can I insert myself to make this program even better than it is? And so that just kind of helped me get to the more team leader side of stuff. That's one thing that I think if you all talk to the really good cup racers, right, they talk about leadership and being the main guy that everyone kind of goes to for answers and looks up to. And I think that right now I'm doing a really good job of that. I think I'm finally figuring out how to stand up, be the guy that needs to speak when we need to speak, and say the hard things when we got to say the hard things. And that wasn't easy. That's not my personality. Everybody that knows me in the garage knows that I'm not the guy that's mouthy or gonna talk back to people. But it's not really about that. It's trying to just make the whole group a little bit better. So. Yeah, I think that's the big difference, really, is I'm starting to figure out how to be a leader of the team and not be the one looking at the crew chief for answers.
Any final questions for Brandon? right, Brandon. Thanks for coming in. Good luck.
Thank you, guys.